We here in the United States are often wrapped up in our domestic issues, as I often like to point out. But every so often we have to take a look overseas to see how the world may also be collapsing. Well, in the United States, we have the prospect of Donald Trump being indicted on multiple felonies. The official reporting states they won't actually indict him until after the midterms because, well, that would be election interference now, wouldn't it? I mean, raiding his home isn't. But okay, the big story right now, Taiwan shoots down suspected Chinese drone for first time. Yo, this is getting crazy. We got a report the other day that they fired a warning shot on a Chinese drone, saying, don't fly near our island. Now we're hearing they shot down a Chinese drone. But I want to pause for just 1 minute. While the Financial Times is saying it's a suspected Chinese drone, CNN is saying it's an unidentified drone. Dude, it is literally a drone from China. Like, I really, where else could it have come from? Is it like a German drone made it all the way down there? What they're saying is it's a civilian-style drone, probably a surveillance object of some sort, a surveillance device, not like a Predator, whatever those things are called, Predator drones. This is probably like some kind of small consumer drone that you can buy, but an excellent military tool for surveillance. China wants to keep an eye on what's happening on Taiwan because it really does look like we're gearing up for war. And an invasion of Taiwan alone may not spark World War III, but it certainly will trigger a series of events which could, in fact, result in World War III. If they make a move on Taiwan, there's no telling what other Southeast Asian countries might do in response, seeing China act aggressively and continually expanding into this area, even sinking Vietnamese fishing vessels. We don't know exactly how Japan or Australia would respond, and the U.S. would likely get dragged into it. But we must look beyond the Pacific, because over in Europe, we have a real prospect for World War III in Ukraine. And as much as the media and the propagandists want to claim that we're winning and Vladimir Putin is shaking and dying and is losing his generals, that may be just that, propaganda. Right now, there's a concern after shelling hit the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. They had to shut it down. UN inspectors are showing up because this is getting scary. Now, some have argued nothing really will come of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Russia's controlling it. And we're hearing stories that people inside are being tortured. Sounds like propaganda to me. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everybody involved is a saint or a sinner. The reality is it's war. And there are interests at stake. And both sides of any conflict, every side, is going to take questionable actions. Y'all want to sit here and praise Abraham Lincoln? I mean, I got to be honest. I think he did a pretty good job. But let's not forget, he did a bunch of evil stuff, too. He created a corridor from D.C. up to Pennsylvania, suspending habeas corpus. They sent in federal authorities to arrest sitting members of the Maryland legislature who are sympathetic to secession. Yeah, they violated people's rights because they said, we can't take the risk. Do we ignore that in our history? We don't. History is never perfect, and it's often written by the winners. We do want to highlight the good things. Fair point. And my perspective on everything that's happening is, Russia, they're losing. They were losing an economic conflict. And so they decided to escalate it to physical warfare, and that's crossing the line. If we can outbid you and we can out-influence you, that is the preferable route. Russia, they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle the pressure campaign. So they decided they'd use bombs instead. So Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, there's a lot of arguments about how it really went down and who's right and who's wrong. The reality is it's war. Believe whoever you want to believe, but it's war. We're now hearing that Russia actually has the capability of opening up a second front. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Finland is booty dancing on camera. Yeah, that's what the people of Finland need because they border Russia. And Russia threatened action if they joined NATO, and they're trying to join NATO. Ladies and gentlemen, we may be looking at some kind of international conflict, maybe not World War III. And at the same time, we in the United States are looking at civil war in our own country. I want to remind all of you why I bring up Abraham Lincoln. You call him a hero. And in a lot of ways, I think so. I mean, for whatever his motives, ending slavery was a good thing. Saving and preserving the Union, I think, was a good thing. It led the United States to become a very powerful and prosperous nation. But now we're getting reports that they're going after Trump's lawyers. They're going after the Oath Keeper's lawyer with criminal charges. This is unprecedented in this country. There will be a suspension of rights should war break out. And that's where we're headed. Before we get started with all of this, my friends, click the link in the description below if you would like to help me to lure people in to my right-wing world. At least that's what the Daily Beast says. Tim Pool's new song, I'm using it to lure people into my right-wing world. Ah, they love it. Thanks for the commercial, guys. We launched a song because we're building culture. Click the link in the description below. You can pick up the song for 69 cents. It really, really, really does help because song purchases are very, very powerful when it comes to charting and positioning with getting the song out there. And we want to maximize play. If you don't like the song, totally cool. You don't have to buy it. Please just, buy it if you like it. You want to support our work. But we're looking to launch a new music division, signing new bands, and we want to impact culture. This is one way we can try and save our country. Just one way. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. I'm not saying it's the absolute way to save the world. I'm saying it's one thing that we can do and you can support. Here's the story from the Financial Times. So smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Here's the story from the Financial Times. A report. Taiwan shot down a drone over one of its outlying islands for the first time on Thursday as Taipei begins to respond more forcefully to a sustained Chinese military pressure campaign. The Taiwanese army said an unidentified commercial drone equipped with cameras intruded into restricted airspace over the waters around Shiyu, a Taiwan-controlled islet less than 4 kilometers from Chinese territory. After warnings and attempts to expel it remained without effect, soldiers in the garrison brought it down with defensive shots, said the army command on the island of Kinmen, which is around 20 kilometers from the Chinese city of Xiamen. Now I'm going to pause. This may be some kids flying a commercial drone, but 4 kilometers is quite a distance to travel. And that's from Chinese territory, meaning it was probably 15 miles out from their coastline. I don't think this was civilian. It's possible. I think this is Chinese government surveillance. Drones are powerful tools, man. Taiwan's defense ministry declined to say whether the uncrewed aerial vehicle was Chinese, but the incident follows a series of similar intrusions by civilian-use drone models into Kinmen airspace over the past 2 weeks, all of which left in the direction of Xiamen. On Tuesday, Taipei said it had fired shots at one of such drones to expel it. The action against drones comes as Taiwan is trying to show more resolve in deterring Chinese aircraft and warships from flying and sailing closer to its territory. These Chinese activities have continued since Beijing held unprecedented week-long exercises in response to a visit to Taipei by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in August. Earlier on Thursday, Robert Tsao, founder of United Microelectronics Corporation, Taiwan's second largest chip maker, said he would give NT 600 MN, 19.6 MN, what is it, million, I don't know what currency that is, it's Taiwanese, to support a civil society initiative to train 3 million civilian fighters and NT 400, so they're saying $20 million, to further train 300,000 civilian marksmen. The donations were the first portions of 100 million that Tsao has pledged towards strengthening Taiwan's defenses. Tsao, 75, who ran afoul of Taiwanese authorities in the past by seeking to circumvent restrictions on investment in China, has morphed over the past month into one of the most vocal critics of Beijing. Following his $100 million pledge, Tsao gave up Singaporean citizenship and restored his citizenship to Taiwan. Facing journalists on Thursday wearing a bulletproof vest, he proudly displayed a Taiwan identity card issued the previous day and said he wanted to die nowhere else. Now, there's a lot of internal politics going on. We can see here that efforts are happening to shore up Taiwan's defense. Take a look at this. This is an interesting photo. It says Taiwan is showing more resolve. I don't know if this territory, this island right here, is Taiwan or why they're showing it. But if that's the case, that's pretty close. 4 kilometers, however. While it is easy for many civilians to fly a drone that distance, what is it, like 2.5 miles or something like that? That's a hefty range. I think that's like pushing it for a lot of these drones. You need some, you might need special equipment for that. It is consumer grade and all that stuff. But considering it's 4 kilometers from Chinese territory, that would imply their water territory as well. Now, CNN is saying it's an unidentified drone. Okay, fine. I suppose this is the Taiwanese inlet that they're showing. Taiwan, of course, is probably wanting strategic positioning to know if China is going to launch some kind of attack on them. So call it unidentified. I just want to make sure y'all are getting the full picture because it's conflicted reporting. My personal opinion, as these videos are opinion, is that it is Chinese because it's coming from China. Now, whether or not CCP is something totally different. The threat of escalation is here, my friends. Reuters reported today at 1 a.m. China has been simulating attacks on U.S. Navy ships Taiwan says. Whoa, 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 whoa. Taiwan says? Okay, now hold on there a minute, mister. It may be true. There may be a real threat to the United States from China. They may be gearing up to defend against U.S. support for Taiwan, or Taiwan could be saying this because they want us to support them in the event a war breaks out. Take it with a grain of salt, my friends. U.S. News reports China has been simulating attacks on U.S. Navy ships and is aiming to prevent foreign forces from coming to Taiwan's aid in the event of a war. Taiwan's defense ministry said in a strongly worded report raising the alarm of Beijing's military designs. Tension between Taiwan and China have soared following a visit by Nancy Pelosi, this we know. Taiwan's defense ministry, in a report to Parliament that was reviewed by Reuters, said China was continuing to strengthen its combat preparedness for an attack on the island. It was focusing on the first island chain, which runs from Japan through Taiwan, the Philippines, and onto Borneo, enclosing China's coastal areas. There was no immediate response from Beijing to the report. China has been using combat drills to carry out simulated attacks on U.S. ships that enter into the first island chain, the report said. The U.S. has been regularly sailing naval ships into the South China Sea, sometimes close to Chinese-held islands, and also through the Taiwan Strait on what it calls freedom of navigation missions that always anger China. Starting this year, the ministry said China has increased its military intimidation, including drills that aim to undermine Taiwan's morale and force negotiations with a war and force unification with arms. China could use special forces or agents to decapitate Taiwan's command systems and damage infrastructure in an attack, and is capable of launching electronic attacks to disrupt communications and command systems, said the report, which was dated Thursday. Will what's happening there result in World War III? My friends, I really just don't know, and I'm sorry I can't say. But things are getting bad in China as well. And while we can certainly point to potential conflict, we must make sure in this context we reference that China is falling apart internally on its own. Now, maybe this is a trick. As Sun Tzu said, and I'm sure China is well aware, when you are strong, appear weak. When you are weak, appear strong. I think that's what it was. I know that the idea is if you're weak to appear strong, right? The idea is to make sure your opponent does not know. There's a great story. It's about Chuko Liang, I think his name was. He had a fort, and he knew that an enemy troop was coming to invade. And he didn't have the ability to defend the fort. So what did he do? He opened the gates, sat atop the walls, and played a lute. And then, when the enemy troops showed up, they saw him there with the gates open, playing the lute, concluded this must be a trap, and retreated. In reality, he didn't have the forces to defend himself. That's what you must be aware of. China is locking down its cities, megacity Chengdu, as COVID-0 intensifies. We're hearing about mortgage boycotts. It seems like things are falling apart quite a bit in China. But maybe that is to lure us into a false sense of security. So take it for what it is. The real scary thing here, my friends, is what's happening in Ukraine. Ukraine nuclear reactor shut down due to shelling, operator says. Please don't shell a nuclear reactor in Ukraine. Bro, it's been like 30 years since that other disaster in Ukraine, Chernobyl. We still haven't completely recovered from the damage caused by that. And I think the elephant's foot, it's called, the meltdown, the reactor meltdown, is still there, like blasting out radiation like crazy. You can go on tour there. Scary stuff. I got to be honest with you guys. I went to Fukushima, and they told me that it was a bad idea, and I wore protective gear, and it probably was a really bad idea. Now, we were told over and over again, you'll be fine. It's not that big a deal. But the radiation there really does cause damage to your systems. I may have shaved off a few years of my life by just going to Fukushima. For this going on now, what's happening at this reactor, this is scary stuff. Reuters reports, one of two operational reactors at Ukraine's Russian-held Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant complex has been shut down due to Russian shelling, operator Energoatom said on Thursday. Now, we can take them at their word, perhaps. I don't know for sure. But the National Interest reports, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is kindling for World War III. They said it. Hey, they said World War III, not me. I only repeated them saying World War III. A lot of people get mad when they're like, Tim, don't say Civil War and don't say World War III. And a lot of people say, like, simply talking about it will exacerbate the problem. And I'm like, dude, maybe, but what do? Do you ignore it? I don't know that ignoring it solves the problem either. You have to address problems, so it's tough. It is. And there's a real potential for World War III, man. I'm not trying to overhype it or whatever. Maybe I'm wrong, fine. But this stuff is worrying. Henry Sokolsky reports, as the International Atomic Energy Agency readies itself to visit the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Ukraine, Western officials are sighing a sigh of relief. However, there is worry they have yet to consider how civilian nuclear plants in war zones become radiological bombs that could ignite World War III. Seem shrill? Late last week, the chairman of the Select Committee on Defense in the British House of Commons warned that any deliberate damage causing potential radiation leak to a Ukrainian nuclear reactor would be a breach of NATO's Article 5. Here we go. Article 5 of the NATO Treaty requires all signatories to come to the defense of any alliance members that suffers an armed attack. How imminent might a radiological release be? Late Thursday, all external power to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant was cut off. The only source of electricity was the plant's emergency diesel generators, which had no more than 5 days of fuel to power the plant's essential safety and fuel cooling electric water pumps. Had those generators run short of fuel, which could be exacerbated by Russian pilfering, and the one remaining power line not been reconnected, a loss of coolant accident, think Fukushima, could have ensued in 80 minutes. Oh, I don't want to think about that, man. This is reality, though. Ukrainian authorities understand this. That's why last week they distributed iodine tablets to Ukrainians to reduce thyroid cancers if Zaporizhzhia plant should blow. Full stop. Let me learn you something, good friends. Let me learn you something. Iodine tablets only stop iodine 131. I think it's 131. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 113. I think it's 131. The way it works is that when there is an explosion, there's a series of radioactive particles. There might be like MOX plutonium like we saw at Fukushima. I'm not sure what they have there. But radioactive iodine, it lands on things. You eat it. It goes in your body. It goes in your thyroid. Radioactive particles are then used by your thyroid for thyroid business, and then it destroys and damages the DNA, causing thyroid cancer and problems. By taking an iodine pill, your body flushes the excess radioactive iodine from your system. It is no guarantee that you will survive radioactive particulates spraying all over the place. It just helps a little bit. Romania, a NATO nation, also grasps this. Earlier in the month, its health minister encouraged Romanians to pick up free iodine pills at the local pharmacies. Last week, Romania's neighbor, Moldova, imported 1 million tablets for its own population. Do you have iodine? Potassium iodide, I think, is what people typically buy. We here at the Timcast Castle, we have potassium iodide. We have emergency food. We got rice. We got water. We got all that good stuff. And we're not really expecting it nuked anytime soon. If they were to use the Satan II missile on DC, yeah, we're in trouble. That thing is insane. My friends, the power of modern nuclear weapons is a sight to behold, but hopefully you never do, because that thing would be, it's like a 50-mile radius or some insane number, just absolutely insane, maybe more. They go on to say, what these states appreciate is not only that accidents are possible in war, but that Russian President Vladimir Putin might intentionally assault Ukraine's nuclear plants, turning them into pre-positioned nuclear weapons, whose dispersal of radioactivity could force evacuations and frighten Ukraine's NATO supporters to relent. They also understand that the war is not over. There are 9 other Ukrainian power plants that Putin could attack in western and southern Ukraine. I think it is well within the capabilities and interests of Vladimir Putin to nuke Kiev. I hope he does, and I hope this doesn't go that far. But it really is simple. If Vladimir Putin used a lower yield nuclear weapon, we're talking a kiloton bomb, not a megaton bomb, he could wipe out 100,000 people in Kiev and instantly demoralize the entire country. Now, he runs the risk of triggering Article 5, because a nuclear attack is serious and serious retaliation. So it really just comes down to, if NATO decides to go full steam ahead, I would not be surprised if Russia said, fire the nukes. Fire the nuclear weapons. The only reason they're not is because NATO is playing proxy war. They say. And what is Washington's response? It has 2 big ideas, both nearly 70 years out of date. The first is to get the IAEA inspectors to visit, which they've done. I have supported this if it helps establish that the Zaporizhzhia plant is still Ukraine's, not Russia's. But no one should be under any illusions. The IAEA was founded 70 years ago to promote nuclear power and to conduct occasional nuclear audits, not to physically protect plants against military attacks or to demilitarize zones around them. The IAEA can't provide the Zaporizhzhia plant with any defenses, nor will it risk keeping IAEA staff on site to serve as defensive tripwires. Which brings me to a tweet from Mr. Mike Cernovich. Phil Stewart tweeted, Germany's chief of defense has warned that the West must not underestimate Moscow's military strength, saying Russia has the scope to open up a second front should it choose to do so. Cernovich says, strange. I've been assured since day one that Russia is losing, will retreat in 14 days, and it's nothing more than a gas station. Yup. They've been lying to us, and it's bad. It's bad. Russia may not be the most powerful country on the planet, but they've got power. And do you think they will simply crumble and fall? No way, man. Just absolutely no way. Here we go. Larry Sabato says, most disturbing finding a new Quinnipiac poll. 2/3 of Americans think the nation's democracy is in danger of collapse, up from 58% in January. Do you believe that World War III could unite the United States, the factions of the woke and the non-woke, and they come together? Never going to happen. If World War III does break out, what you will likely see is the woke moralists using that as justification for the suspension of rights, and they will go after MAGA like you would not believe. They're already doing it. And this may be the reason why. Karine Jean-Pierre reiterates that tens of millions of Americans are an extreme threat to our democracy. That's right. The White House says that MAGA Republicans are an extreme threat to our democracy. That's 74 million people. That's something else. They're gearing up. And it's going to get bad. The New York Post reports how the DOJ has built a case against Trump for obstruction. Newsweek says Trump could face multiple felonies in classified documents probe. And here's where it gets real dark. Oath Keeper's lawyer, Kelly Sorrell, charged in January 6th conspiracy case. Sorrell was charged with felony obstruction of justice for tampering with documents in a grand jury investigation, in addition to charges for entering Capitol grounds on January 6th. Very interesting. Sorry, I don't believe the DOJ. When you arrest a lawyer. Now, fair point. Antifa plays this game. They get people who claim that they're journalists, but they're actually just Antifa, trying to use it as a shield. It's possible this lawyer went in the Capitol and engaged in whatever behavior, and then tried using the lawyer thing as a shield, perhaps. But I don't believe it, because the New York Times reports Trump's lawyers may be witnesses or targets in documents investigation. 2 lawyers for former President Donald J. Trump are under increased scrutiny after new details emerged about a failure to fully comply with a subpoena for documents marked as classified. Dark days indeed, my friends. Dark days indeed. This is where things are going. It's scary. They're going after lawyers. Lawyers. One of the bedrocks of liberty in the Constitution is that you have a right to due process. You have a right to legal defense. But like I said, when y'all go back in time and look at how things are handled in times of war, legal defense is meaningless. I mean, we have a First Amendment, right? Didn't stop the U.S. from creating the U.S. Office of Censorship. What was it, the Department of Censorship? Whatever. And what was their slogan? It was silence accelerates victory. Silence accelerates victory. They said, don't talk. Loose lips sink ships. So much for your First Amendment rights, right? What about the Second Amendment? Oh, they came in earlier than that with the National Firearms Act. Yeah, your rights are only available. Your rights only go so far as people are willing to defend them. And it's very likely that should we enter war, it'll trigger something terrifying. They'll round people up. Mark my words. If World War III does break out, don't be surprised if you as a dissenting voice find yourself in a camp or in jail. Abraham Lincoln did it. They say he's a hero. I got to be honest. I'm a fan. Not a fan of what he did in those regards to violating rights, and that's a scary prospect. But did he need to do it to win the war? And that's a scary thing. Now, the Confederacy. They had some things right. I think it's stupid to try and moralize based on faction. No, but they were mostly wrong. And that's the issue. You can't have a nation claiming to support your individual rights and your right to secession while you're keeping people as property. Sorry. So the South, what they get right, but we're hypocrites, is like, you have a right to say you do not govern me. But it's really funny coming from people who are trying to maintain slave ownership. Now, I get it. States' rights was a big component of this. But a state's right to do what? Slavery was the principal issue. There were other issues. The North wasn't being held to the same standard. It was seen as a conflict of interest in the federal government. But don't come to me and be like, we have rights. They don't. Bro, I'm not going to defend your rights if you don't defend other people's rights. You see how that works? So that being said, preserving the Union and what Abraham Lincoln did, I think, is a good thing on the whole. But how do we get past his violation of human rights? I don't know that you can. I think you have to recognize that winning means winning. That's the scary thing. In war, morals are a luxury. It's funny that we have this concept of war crimes, to be completely honest. I always thought about this. They say, like, was it the Hague Convention? You can't use hollow points. The Geneva Convention, I think, is like you can't take territories and colonize and things like that. Hey, that's fanciful thinking, my friend, but that's colonial thinking. That's right. If we were to operate in this world based off of the presuppositions of European countries, well, then that's colonialism. And as the culture in the United States moves away from Eurocentric views, then what's to stop the conquering of other lands or the use of hollow points in warfare or gas and chemical weapons? When it comes to war, they say all is fair in love and war, because all that matters in war is winning. And if you've got enemies like Russia, they're willing to do whatever it takes to win. If you're not, you'll lose. That's the reality of warfare. We want to come out and act like the world is fair, the world is just, but it's not. We want to come out and act like we're better and we're above it, but we are not. We are confined by the laws of nature. And the laws of nature warrant nuclear strikes. Now, I wish that wasn't the case. I don't want them to be the case, but we may actually wipe ourselves out because we have the capability to do so, and we have the desire to win. How do you get past something like that? These are dark days indeed, to put it mildly. Now, we stared on the barrel of a World War III, of a civil war, but my friends, all is not lost. Okay? A lot of people don't like listening to stories like this because they think it's dark, it's negative. But look, just because bad things are happening doesn't mean we give up. It should strengthen your resolve. You shouldn't run and hide from the information. You should embrace it and figure out what that means for you. Do you have emergency food? Do you have emergency water? Do you have a backup generator? Do you have some way of surviving in the event of a supply chain disruption? Are you prepared to protect yourself and your family? I look at the culture. I did a segment earlier on Gutfeld beating Colbert in the ratings. That's good news. This stuff about going after Trump and indicting him may not matter all that much because culturally we are winning. And they've tried everything to stop us, but freedom wins. It always does. Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks came out once and he was like, the left always wins. No, they don't. They literally don't. How do you think you got 70 years of military dictatorship in Spain or Nazi Germany? Because the left lost. And then maybe he's talking about the United States, that throughout history in the United States, the left is always winning. No, freedom, liberty is always winning. And y'all certainly don't represent that now. So I say, my friends, I'm optimistic. We had a great response when we released a song. The Daily Wire is doing tremendously well. You've got rappers like Tom MacDonald challenging the system. I'm kind of excited for what's to come. I don't think it's going to be complete, total warfare, civil war, global warfare. I think it could be some kind of civil war. Hopefully it's not a revolution. Revolution implies just losing and the far left taking over. And maybe if there is war, maybe it's limited. I don't know about World War III. China and Russia are doing joint military operations. They got Belarus and India in there. And this is a lot to do with what's going on in Ukraine and Taiwan. And so there is a real fear that we could be heading towards major crisis. Either way, I'm optimistic that we will be all right. you and I will survive. We will live to see another day. I'm confident that you and your family will be all right and live to see another day. As bad as it may get, I don't think it's going to get that bad. But as I always say, I really don't know. And I always want to just drive that point home. There are certainly times where I've thought things will happen, and then they didn't happen. There are certainly times where the left takes things I say out of context, implying that, I was making a prediction I wasn't making, for sure. But you look at the news right now, and all signs lead to World War III. But keep in mind, variables exist to such a great degree that we really just can't know. And while this news is being reported and we focus on it, we may be missing the big picture. There are a million different pieces to this puzzle, and we can only see 100 of them. The media gives us these stories. They're big pieces, mind you. But it could be right now, and we wouldn't know, that there's a back-channel conversation happening to de-escalate tensions at Zaporizhzhia. We wouldn't know. We wouldn't know until everything is said and done. So perhaps the night is always darkest before the dawn, but perhaps it's already been its darkest, and we're coming on the other side. We would not know. I suppose the inverse is true. Perhaps we have not reached the darkest point before the dawn begins to emerge, and that's a scary prospect. So the only thing that needs to be said, get emergency food, get emergency water supplies, get emergency tools, download to your phone right now a survival guide, and don't fret about it. Don't cry about it. Just think ahead. What's the worst case scenario with all of this? And what do you need to do in the event of a catastrophe? Be it no water, a storm, a fire, or World War III. What do you do if the president is indicted? Think ahead, plan ahead. Because if they go after Trump, I think people might lose their minds. And you may want to lay low. You may want to make sure you have supplies, because if things do break apart, if this country does crumble, you're going to want to be prepared for it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.